There's a lot to discuss.
Holy
Um,
crap, is there ever?
I know what can happen in 2 weeks. This is insane. I mean,
Well,
it
look
just,
what happened last week. Good God.
uh, okay. Let's start with, okay, wait, what is the timeline? So it was like the first presidential debate and then the Rose Garden thing with the judge that led to the big reveal, right? He got COVID, Trump got COVID. And then, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people speculate that Trump himself is the super spreader.
Mhm.
Others are thinking it might be Bill Barr. I mean, it's
Uh,
just, but they're, see, the thing is, they were all in that, was the Rose Garden ceremony it was, which is no longer the Rose Garden because Melania ripped up all the roses and paved it over or something like that.
oh my God.
But
Yeah.
so they were in tight quarters. The chairs were stacked right on top of each other. They're all sitting on top of each other, not wearing masks. And I guess at some point Barr was like gobbing into his hands or something, and then it went around like shaking people's hands. So it's like,
And they're not even attempting to do contact tracing. I mean, it's just
oh no,
amazing, honestly.
they put the kibosh on that.
Uh,
It's like so now you got what, Hope Hicks, you got, was it Stephen Miller, you got Chris Christie, you've got, I mean, all these people now are testing positive for it. Kellyanne Conway, I think, also.
mhm. Wasn't she supposed to leave, but she's still there? But yeah, all these people have tested positive, and the spreading continues. And then you see the whole drama with Trump coming. Well, first he went to the hospital, right? I mean, this happens in like 2 weeks. It was just like I said, it's too much. There's so much going on, and I think he wants it that way. But that just what's going on is amazing. Just the fact that he, like, putting on a show, going out with a joyride, walking up the stairs, and then taking on his mask and walking back in the White House. I mean, like, what world are we living in, Jim? Where he's just like, if this is like, if this is
We
the
live,
pinnacle, I don't even know. I mean, there's so much going on.
well, this is what happens when you've got, and it's not just limited to Trump, but the GOP in general, especially when you have a bunch of people who are anti-science,
True.
whether it's the science of the virus, the science of climate change, evolution, vaccines. You pick the topic, and they're going to come out and basically push forth this conspiracy theory. But the other issue that is alarming to me, and Professor Richard Wolff, has been speaking to this a lot recently, and this is what happens when you've got capitalism that's so involved in society, when capitalism basically, because companies are not going to make masks and ventilators and PPEs just to stick it in a warehouse waiting for that virus to come around every 20 years or 100 years or whatever, because then it's going to cost them money to maintain, replace, that kind of stuff. So they're not going to make it. That's why we weren't prepared.
Right.
The government needs to do with that what they do with the military stuff. You have all these manufacturers making all this military crap, and the government buys that up. So why not just have the companies make all this, medical stuff? Government buys that up. The government takes over the maintenance and so on. But then you have the stuff on hand. But but no, we don't. So now what happens is you got capitalism just infiltrating everything, and some people are now skeptical. I can't say I blame them, that they don't trust if a vaccine were to come out, because you got all these companies rushing in to make a killing, literally. I mean,
I know.
like, Trump is saying, "Yeah, I got great medical care." Imagine if you or I went in the hospital and had all that done to us that was done to him. Imagine the medical bills we would be stuck with.
Absolutely, Jim. Good point.
But oh, you can't have socialized medicine.
Meanwhile, he has it. I mean, it's amazing. And just, yeah, he's saying he's cured. I could be immune. And of course, it's a reality TV show. But yeah, like you said, the root of it is capitalism has run amok. And Professor Richard Wolff, great
Oh,
analysis. Yeah, you know,
I
he
mean,
knows
he's
what
just, Feast has just been,
I know he's gone
he's
crazy.
in very high demand lately. I mean, he's showing up on Exy. I watched it yesterday. He actually stated that he is now of the opinion, and he said basically the last several months have basically pushed him to this conclusion. He said that capitalism is on its way out,
But what will replace it, right?
but what will replace it exactly? But he says, but capitalism is on its way out.
As you can see, what's going on. I mean,
Yeah,
with the coronavirus and well, the lack of leadership, but just the profit motive and who's getting the deals and the vaccine. You know,
yeah.
there's so much
It's
layers to this.
it's well, first of all, think about how capitalism arose in the first place. Back in what, early 1700s or whatever. It arose, the slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
That's where
That's
that's where
it.
had its roots in. Slave trade, rum, that kind of stuff there. There was an interesting TV program called Black Sails. It's about pirates and stuff like that.
Yeah, I never watched it, but I know you're talking about.
It's a really good series, and it takes place in the early 1700s, like, right,
Right.
and you look at a lot of the shenanigans which drove the piracy and all the stuff going on in the Bahamas and stuff. It's all about capitalism.
Good point, Jim. Yeah, that era of piracy and like going towards the Americas to plunder. It's just amazing. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I've definitely it was on
You
Stars.
just made a really good point there. He says going to the Americas to plunder. That's what capitalism is based on: exploitation.
Mhm.
Exploit the people, exploit the resources. Now, back in the 1700s, yeah, the world is infinite, right?
Right,
Well, we
right.
know now that the world is not infinite. You can't have continual growth on a finite place. You can't, you just can't, you don't have infinite resources.
No,
So capitalism is predicated on two very faulty assumptions. Resources are infinite, and all that matters is growth. Well, what happens when you have uncontrolled growth in an organism, right?
it's a cancerous cell.
It's a cancer. So that's
Yeah.
it's it's like when they first came over here, the great auk, penguins of the north, right? They numbered them in the tens of millions. Plenty of auks. Nice big eggs they lay. They're friendly. They're not wary of humans. Flightless. And seriously, they're called the penguins of the north. Guess how many auks live in the planet nowadays?
Are they extinct?
Yep,
Okay.
we drove them to extinction.
Same with the dodo, right? There's all these type of
Hmm.
birds that couldn't make it through the exploitation of like the 1700s. You're right. It is an exploitation. Oh my God, Jim. Light bulb. The 1700s. No, I mean, remember the Rococo period, like the extravagance of all those like kings and queens, and then you got the people starving, and then but that's what it is. People like were leaving and going to exploit, and then the American Revolution. So like the 1700s, yes, it's definitely a capitalist situation that had a really terrible ending at the end, where people were, at least in Western Europe with France, right? That was like the tear something. Yeah, it's been a while since I've talked about this, but yeah, it's like
Well,
when they started chopping
it's
people up with the guillotine. The guillotine, that era. That's a,
yes, yes,
so
yes.
like
Well,
what happened? Yeah,
it's like everything else. Colonialism was nothing but
colonial.
about exploitation. That's all
Absolutely.
it was. And and subject and exploit the locals.
I see
There's
it.
always the locals,
It's
the people of color.
exactly like people were already here, and like we don't need to get into all that, but just the fact that they're dumping people and then they expand westward. It's just that's what America was exploitation. All these different people in the beginning. Well, it's still now. It's a different form, but yeah, going back to the root of it, capitalism from the 1700s has brought us to this point.